Blood-curdling facts that you wish you never knew, part 21. This photo shows 8-month-old Xiao Bao who is lucky to be alive because his mother stabbed him 90 times after he bit her while she was breastfeeding him. The world's scariest haunted house, McCamey Manor, requires you to sign a 40-page waiver and undergo a physical and mental evaluation. If you manage to make it through the house, you could win $20,000, but to this day, no one has ever made it through. The little girl who voiced Ducky in The Land Before Time was shot to death by her father, who then committed suicide. Roman Emperor Nero had a boy castrated, dressed him up as a bride, and married him, all because the boy looked similar to his previous dead wife. A 46-year-old man found and attacked a 13-year-old boy because the kid was killing him too many times in a game of Call of Duty.
This is what your palms actually mean. Put your hands together and analyze which line pattern you have. Number 1, if your left hand line is lower, this means you're independent and don't care what other people think of you. You keep your opinion to yourself, which is why you'll become wise one day. Number 2, if your left hand line is higher, it means you're a super adventurous person. You're extremely confident and don't need to rush into relationships. And you can become anything because you're super independent. Number 3, if your lines are the same, this means you're strong-minded and charming. You're gentle, sensitive, and care what other people think of you.
It's just a cigarette and it cannot be that bad.
Honey, don't you love me and you know it makes me sad.
It's just a cigarette like you always used to do.
I was different then, I don't need them to be cool.
3 facts that could save your life, part 4. If you ever disturb a wasp's nest, don't run for the water. The wasps are so smart they'll wait for you to resurface and then continue to sting you. If you're ever buried in an avalanche, you must spit. Your saliva will follow the gravity and you can dig the opposite way, making it easier to get out. Do you ever struggle in school, especially in math? All you have to do is take a picture of your math problem, and GothMath shows you exactly step by step on how it got the answer and the answer itself, just in case your teacher is extremely annoying with asking you to show your work. The link is in my bio and it's completely free.
How rare is your body? Only 5% of people have blonde hair, and the most common hair in the world is black, and only 7% of the world is capable of tickling themselves, and 25% of people automatically sneeze when they look up at the sun, and only 1% of people have vitiligo. This is a skin condition which allows areas to lose pigment, which causes them to become different colors, and 20% of people have one pupil bigger than the other, and 91.6% of people have a clockwise hair whorl.
This boy claimed he remembered his past life until his parents discovered he wasn't lying. A Syrian boy named Arius was born with a particular red birthmark on his face. As soon as he could speak, he explained to his parents that he had already lived another life as a different man, claiming he was actually murdered with an axe by his own neighbor. Turns out, a man had actually gone missing in their village years earlier, and the neighbor was the prime suspect. So Arius and his parents went to the neighbor's house to find out the truth. When the neighbor opened the door, he turned white as a ghost, claiming he was innocent. But Arius demanded the neighbor come with him, because he knew where his body was actually buried. Arius led them miles from the village to a specific spot under a tree, and they began digging. They found a skull that was cracked exactly where Arius's birthmark was. Everyone was shocked, and the neighbor was later arrested.
The rarest human mutations that actually exist. About 25% of people have photic sneeze reflex, which means they can sneeze just by looking up at the sun. And about 3% of the population have no odor at all. Now, 80% of people have lines that form an M on their palm, and many people believe this is a sign of good fortune. However, 4% of people have an X on their palms, which means they'll become great leaders.
Most unusual places in the world. Located in Quebec, Canada, this forest has a pretty creepy atmosphere. It might be because the ground looks like it's moving, making it seem like Mother Earth is taking a deep breath. This next one is actually terrifying. Located in Penang, Malaysia, this huge water tornado was getting extremely close to this apartment building. Fortunately, it stopped right in front of the building because it ran out of water. And how about this one? It used to be a hiking area before it got flooded. So everything you see here used to be above water. Imagine being a fish and seeing this appear out of nowhere.
Here Here are some things that almost no human can do. Number 1, this requires very flexible fingers and only 3% of people can do it. This is known as the paralyzed finger trick and only 1% of people can do it. First, place your hand on the table and then bend your middle finger like that. Now try lifting your ring finger off the table. Number 3, this is where you raise one eyebrow like this guy, and only 5% of people can do it. Number 4, this is where you make a V shape with your hand like this, and only 3% of people can do it. Now comment which one you can do.
Creepy fact you didn't know about. This sound is just a cat meowing. Sadly, the cat died after the video of it meowing was recorded. The owner slowed it down and made this an audio. If you don't believe me, speed it up.
Be careful what you put in your body. In 2014, a couple returned to their home to find it trashed in baffling ways. There was lotion all over the door handles, all of their shoes had had their soles ripped off of them, and someone had dumped an entire can of paint all over the toilet. Despite the obvious break-in, the police come and can't find any evidence of theft, so they leave thinking the couple's not in danger anymore. That night, the couple hears scratching underneath their bed and what sounds like a crying animal. Not wanting to find out what it was, they leave and call the cops, who come right back and start investigating the house, and they make a startling discovery in their bedroom. Wedged underneath the couple's bed was this 90-pound tiny little woman carrying a huge butcher's knife and a hypodermic needle. As they're taking this crazy lady away in handcuffs, one of the officers comes over to the couple and is like, so she was high on meth, and for at least 2 hours, she had been burrowing a hole in the underside of your mattress with that knife to get to you.
Disturbing body facts that will ruin your day. When you get a kidney transplant, they actually leave your original kidney in your body, and they place your third kidney in your pelvis. And if you wake up because of a loud bang sound, you might actually have exploding head syndrome. It's not painful, but the sensation can be super terrifying. And according to brain surgeons, the brain is not solid at all. It's usually compared to the texture of melted butter. And during your lifetime, you will produce enough saliva to fill up 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Things that almost no humans can do, but I'm not sure, and if you can, then you're bloody weird. This is where you raise one eyebrow like The Rock, and only 5% of humans can actually do this. Do you want this video if you can do it?
This might be the most brutal way somebody has ever died, and whatever you do, don't look up the picture. Octavio da Silva was a 20-year-old soccer referee in Brazil, and on June 30th, 2013, he was refereeing a soccer game when he sent off a player named Josmir Santos Abreu, who was 31 years old. He refused to leave the field and began a fight with the referee. Abreu threw a punch which made Octavio draw a knife from his pocket and repeatedly stab Abreu. Abreu died on the way to the hospital, and when fans watching the game, including Abreu's family and friends, found out about his death, they invaded the field and stoned Octavio before decapitating him, and then ripping his limbs from his body with just their strength and no weapons, and then put his head on a stick in the middle of the field. And what makes this worse is that a graphic video surfaced online shortly after the incident, showing medical personnel reassembling Octavio's body. The video and pictures are extremely disturbing, and I don't recommend looking them up. The way his limbs looked after being ripped off is extremely unsettling to look at, because you see strings of flesh, tissue, and bone because it wasn't cut off properly and it was just ripped off. This case is absolutely awful, but why did Octavio pull out a knife when somebody just punched him? If he didn't stab Josmir Abreu to death, he would still be alive today. But just imagine being literally ripped limb from limb by an angry group of soccer fans, and there's nothing you can do as they pull your body apart.
One of you is going to end up dead. This is the chilling statement that friends of this couple made prior to a horrifying turn of events. On the 25th of March 2022, 24-year-old OnlyFans model Abigail White killed her boyfriend. She stabbed Bradley Lewis through the heart with a kitchen knife when he told her he wanted to finish the relationship. When police arrived at the scene, she actually tried to tell them that he'd done this to himself, but she quickly confessed. She said that she'd never meant to hurt him. Abigail was found guilty of murder and sentenced to 18 years in prison. Shockingly, despite being in prison, she has been able to find a new boyfriend on the outside.
I had thought that I had seen everything when it came to cults, but you are not prepared for what this cult believes. So HBO just released this documentary about the Love Is One cult, which was run by this woman, Amy Carlson, who calls herself Mother God. And I can't believe I'm saying this, but she believed she was controlled by the spirit of Robin Williams, and this like yassified version of Saint Germain. Also, I cover a lot of dark stuff on this page, so you should follow along. She also said she could channel and get advice from this like galactic federation of dead celebrities. There's like Mr. Rogers, Carrie Fisher, Steve Irwin, and randomly Donald Trump, who is not dead. But Robin Williams is at the top, and so the cult believes they're getting a lot of advice through Robin Williams, so they'll say things like, so one of the beliefs that this cult has is that one day Robin Williams is going to arrive in a spaceship to take Mother God away so that she can spiritually ascend. He also told her that she can only be 103 pounds to get on the spaceship, which is why she's trying to lose a lot of weight. Eventually, Mother God starts getting sicker and sicker, and also bluer and bluer because of the colloidal silver supplements they won't stop giving her, and everyone thinks, oh my god, Robin Williams must be coming on a spaceship really soon to help Mother ascend. Eventually, she passes away, and guess what? Shockingly, Robin Williams does not descend in an intergalactic spaceship to come collect the 103-pound body of Mother God. And so the cult members just have her body. They don't know what to do with it. They thought Robin Williams was gonna come. So they hang out with it for 12 days until the police finally show up. Anyways, this whole thing is a trip. You just gotta watch it to believe it.
Imagine being an animal so vile and wild. Not only did you traumatize a researcher, everything he learned about you had to be hidden from the public for almost 100 years. That's what happened to George Murray Levick. He was on an expedition in 1911 when he ran into a group of Adelie penguins. It was the largest colony on Earth, and since nobody had ever spent a whole breeding cycle there, George decided to be first. Oh, he f***ed around, and he spent 3 months finding out. What he found out was Adelie penguins are 50 shades of foul play. No pun intended, maybe. He watched the male penguins attempt to mate with literally anything, including other males, injured females, and even unsupervised penguin chicks. Nah, but what really messed him up was watching a male score with a past tense past expiration date female. Apparently penguins aren't above self-service because he also witnessed one male get it on with an extra curvy piece of snowdrift. To completion. He was so appalled he referred to them as hooligan cocks. And remember, this was 1911, that had to be some kind of slur. George quickly realized that if male penguins understand consent, they could not care less about it, because he reportedly watched one female that was too injured to walk try to crawl away, only for 2 hooligans to catch up to her and demoralize both her and George. I don't even know why he did this, because like, what more do you have to prove? But at one point he did an experiment where he took the frozen decapitated head of a penguin and put it on a pile of snow just to see how low the flightless felons could go. The answer was low enough. George put every messed up thing he learned in a manuscript, and the British Museum of Natural History decided history was exactly what his studies would be when they vaulted it, until it was rediscovered almost 100 years later in 2012. All that trauma and he didn't even live to see it get published, but the worst part, these are Adelie penguins. Yep, it all adds up in the end.
He's the world's smallest prisoner. You'll never guess the terrible things he's done. Part 2. Caroline saw 5-year-old son stood in front of the oven, his face full of shock and confusion. He tried to explain, but his words were slurred and he could only give bits and pieces. Caroline and her husband immediately realized that their son had inadvertently shut his sister in the oven and that he had turned on the oven's heat. Caroline rushed to the oven and quickly opened the door. The heat from the oven hit her and she saw the tiny figure. Her skin blackened by the heat already dying, she hurriedly grabbed out her daughter and rushed to the car with her husband, driving as fast as she could to the hospital along the way. Caroline and her husband's hearts hung in their throats. They kept praying that their daughter would pull through. However, their world completely collapsed when the doctors told them that the child could not be saved. Due to the severity of her injuries, the incident left the Ashley family in deep grief.
Worst ways people have died, part 1. In 2016, a mother pushed her son on a swing for 2 days straight, non-stop, until he passed away. It turns out that sadly, she was mentally ill and was then sent to a mental institution. In 2018, a man named Keno Butler and his wife, Wendy Thompson, were drinking when they started having an argument. Wendy then attacked him with a knife and got him in the hand with it. But she didn't stop there. She then decided to jump on top of him, smothering him with over 300 pounds of body fat and sadly suffocating him. Before I tell you the last one, your boyfriend or girlfriend falls off a cliff with $20 billion. You can only save one. Who are you saving? Let me know down below. In 2021, Karina Smith had discovered that her own husband had been being very inappropriate with their children when they were younger. You won't believe this. She then filled a pot with boiling hot sugar water and dumped it on him while he was sleeping. He didn't survive that painful revenge.
Most Scary Urban Legends, Part 6. This is Krasu. She's a Thailand legend. She's a female spirit who wanders the fields at night. At first you would just see her face, until you look down and she has no body, and just her internal organs. Her guts are usually covered with fresh red blood. Her face appears to look somewhat like a vampire's. She has very sharp teeth, and sometimes has a blue halo around her head. She is always hungry for meat, whether that be animal meat or human meat. Before she goes hunting, she hides her headless body somewhere safe, and she needs to come back to it before sunrise. And then she becomes a normal person again for the day with no differences from anybody else. One of her origins was that she was a princess who was forced to marry a high-ranked Seminese member who killed her people in battle. But she loved somebody else and was caught with them by the Seminese member. She was then sentenced to be burned alive. She then asked the witch for help, who summoned a spell on her immune to fire, but the spell worked too late and everything was burned besides her internal organs and head.
These are 8 horrifying facts that will probably keep you up at night. When Apollo 11 landed, it only had 20 seconds of remaining fuel. 4 months ago, a deceased rapper by the name Gunu had his corpse on stage while fans were partying around his body. The average person wastes 5 months of their lives waiting for red lights to turn green. Cruise ships have morgues, just in case someone, during the trip. If you have red eyes after swimming, it's not from chlorine. It's from the chlorine mixing with other people's urine. The furthest part of the ocean from land is Point Nemo. If you get stuck there, you're not coming back. Sunburn are your cells dying to avoid being cancerous. Most laugh tracks and shows are people from the 50s, which means you're hearing the laughter of dead people. Yeah, there's a lot more, like for part 14.
Disturbing facts that will ruin your life. If you were to be pulled into a black hole, the point of gravity from your head to your toes is so powerfully different that the closer you get, they start to stretch and pull apart. It's called spaghettification. A body can swell to 3 times the normal size, especially if the person passes away in a bathtub. In the 1800s, photographing posed dead bodies was a very normal practice. The smell of vomit actually comes from butyric acid, as does the smell of Parmesan cheese. If you shine a flashlight or smartphone on a newborn sea turtle for too long, it will start crawling around in circles, known as the ring of death. It means that the turtle's eyesight has been permanently damaged due to mistaking your lights for the moon that guides it to sea, and by doing this, you have doomed that sea turtle to death right after birth. The bacteria in gingivitis is contagious. Be careful who you kiss. Armadillos can carry leprosy and pass it onto humans just by being in proximity. When it comes to heart disease, sometimes the very first symptom is sudden death, meaning you could be perfectly healthy and drop dead because you had heart disease and did not know it. The wondrous smell you get while cutting grass is actually a chemical distress signal. You're smelling the silent screams of your lawn. The outside of your eye prevents your immune system from ever knowing about the inside of your eye. If a puncture allows the two to meet, your immune system may attack and destroy your eye as an invader. Hit the plus sign if you want to learn more facts.
This is one of the most terrifying urban legends I've ever heard, and it ended up being true. But in Canada, there was this legend that one night a bunch of people saw a bright blue light in the sky, and the next day an entire village of people disappeared. But it turns out that legend is rooted in something that really happened. This is coming from this week's episode. I have a whole series on urban legends that ended up being true, and it's a very scary listen. So in Canada in 1930, a fur trapper named Joe LaBelle was riding in the river in his canoe when he came to a village he had seen before. Except this time when he came upon it, it looked like everyone had left in a hurry. Food was still cooking, and a bunch of dogs were barking and super hungry as if they had been left behind. But the strangest part of all of this was in the middle of the community, there was a grave that had been disturbed. And that reminded the fur trapper of a very scary story he had heard. The legend of the Tornrak, which was this demon that supposedly stalked the area. So he starts looking for someone who might know what happened to these people. They were a nomadic people. It didn't make any sense that they would have left all of their stuff behind. And that's when he finds a man in a hospital who was potentially part of the village. The man is so freaked out. He won't say anything at first, but eventually Joe gets him to talk, and he recognizes one word that the man says. Tornrak, the name of the evil deity that was potentially in the area. The police basically don't believe any of this, but they do acknowledge that before the disappearance, they did see blue lights in the sky that no one has been able to figure out what they were. I get more into the theories of what may have happened in this episode, and I also talk a little bit more about other urban legends that ended up being true.
Top 5 urban legends that turned out to be real. Chuck E. Cheese animatronics move on their own. Chuck E. Cheese has been long rumored to be haunted by animatronic figures that move on their own, even when the power is off. These tales were often dismissed as mere urban legends meant to spook children. However, in 2019, a former employee's testimony brought an eerie truth to light. The employee recounted how during after-hour maintenance, the animatronics would occasionally shift positions or emit sounds despite being turned down. This phenomenon was actually captured on video showing an animatronic character moving its eyes and mouth when the restaurant was closed. The unsettling footage showed the animatronic's eyes flickering to life and their mouths moving silently. One night, the employee was cleaning when they noticed an animatronic had shifted slightly from its usual position. At first, they thought it was just a trick of the light or a mistake. But then the animatronic's eyes glowed eerily in the darkened room. A soft mechanical whirring sound filled the air and its mouth began to move as if it was speaking. Desperate to prove they weren't imagining things, the employee set up a camera the next night. The footage showed the animatronics moving on their own, their eyes darting around and their mouths opening and closing in the darkness. The video spread among the staff, many of whom had had their own unsettling experiences. Some reported hearing faint, childlike laughter when the restaurant was empty, while others felt cold spots and the sensation of being watched. If you have the guts, follow for the next urban legend.
Creepy facts about your body you're gonna wish you didn't know. When you go down a drop on a roller coaster and you suddenly feel your stomach drop, it's not just you feeling nervous. What you're feeling are your organs actually moving. Have you ever noticed that an older person in your life seems to have very long, large ears? That's because your ears will never stop growing. Across your lifetime, you will spend an average of an entire year just sitting on a toilet. When we see brains outside of the human body, they usually look pretty solid, but your brain, while inside your skull while you're alive, is actually very soft. It's like melted butter soft.